These are short babysitting stories, but each one ends with either something that shouldn't have been there, or creepy things that will not want to make you babysit ever again. I was babysitting a couple of siblings, a brother and sister, and the sister had a friend over to play with as well. The two girls were 5, the boy was probably 7 or 8, just a little older. I was watching them during the day on a weekend because their single mum had to go into work. When I got into the house, the boy was zoned out watching TV, and the little girls were playing with dolls in another room. The morning went fine, but in the afternoon, as I am making lunch, I hear screams in the backyard. I run back there, and the boy is wielding a seriously sharp kitchen knife. The two little girls have barricaded themselves into one of those plastic playhouses and are screaming in terror, and the boy is madly stabbing the knife through the slits in the windows, laughing. As I run over, I am shouting at him to stop, but he keeps stabbing, and I have to tackle him and wrestle the knife away. I ended up getting TV. Almost immediately, I heard one of the girls crying, run to the bathroom and slam the door. But this wasn't like them. I went back upstairs and tried to enter the bathroom, but the door was locked and the little girl wouldn't respond, just cry. I decided to check in on the second sister. They share a room with a bunk bed. Both of them were sound asleep. But I could still hear the hysterical crying. I ran back downstairs, still hearing the crying. Their parents returned half an hour later and we all went to check the bathroom, but still audible crying. But this time, the door wasn't locked and the crying quietly faded as we approached. I retired my babysitting career that night. I had just put the kids to bed and I was chatting on the phone in the kitchen when suddenly I hear the 3-year-old girl crying hysterically. I dropped the phone and ran into the room and she basically jumped in my arms, clinging to me for dear life. Her 2-year-old brother was laying in bed, wide-eyed and silently terrified. When she finally calmed down enough to talk, I asked her what was wrong, and she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Satan is scaring me." Her brother just nodded. I was babysitting my cousin one time, and we were playing dress up, so she decided to start making my hair. We were sitting in front of the mirror, and the entire time she kept looking at something over my shoulder in the reflection. There was nothing there, so after about 10 minutes, I asked her what she was staring at, and she goes, "The tall man. He says he wants to play with you." Needless to say, I did not want to play with him. I was babysitting a little boy. It was bedtime, so I took him upstairs and tucked him in. He looks over my shoulder and goes, "Who's that woman on my ceiling?" Chills. I have never been so scared to turn around. There was nothing there, obviously, as I am still alive, but I was really creeped out. I went downstairs, sat against the wall with all the lights on, and passively watched the Food Network and reading Fellowship of the Ring until the parents came home. I did not babysit there ever again. I was watching my 2 little brothers in the basement of my father's house one day. We were playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and pretend fighting crime. All of a sudden, my little brother, 2 at the time, jumped over onto the couch and hid behind me and began crying hysterically. I asked him what was wrong, and he pointed at the stairs and said, "Black ghost." That was one of the most frightening moments of my entire life. I was babysitting a really sweet, polite 9-year-old girl. She was telling me about the pets she'd had in the past. Apparently, she'd wanted a guinea pig, which she has now, but her mother wouldn't let her get one because she already had a goldfish. So, she's telling me this, and then she leans over to me and says, "So, I murdered it." According to her, she waited until everyone had gone to bed, snuck downstairs, and then repeatedly ran over the goldfish with a toy truck. She then put it back in the tank, and upon discovering its death, she scuttled off to get her new guinea pig. When my mum was a teenager, she was left to babysit my uncle, then maybe 6 or 7. She told him to get his pajamas on and/or go to bed. But he didn't want to. So, instead of going to get his pajamas on, he came back 2 minutes later with a knife. And she had to use the ironing board as a shield for protection until my older uncle sneaked up and grabbed him from behind. I only ever babysat once. It was 2 brothers about 6 and 4. They were being really good and quiet. We were just watching TV, probably some show on YouTube or whatever, and the younger one stands up randomly and whispers, "There." So I'm like, "What?" as I watch him slowly walk up to the TV, stop just in front of the screen, and press his head to it. I go to move him away from the screen, and he just says, "Okay." I looked at him, and his eyes were crossed and his body was stiff. So I turned the TV off, and then he just kind of snapped out of it and got back to playing like nothing ever happened. I'll tell my story, but I need to leave out some identifying details. I was living in a very secluded place. I got a reference from a friend who was too busy to babysit for this family who was vacationing nearby at a house near the ocean. The house turned out to be less than a mile from the beach with nothing but sand between us and it. There were only a couple of vacation homes and they were all pitch black when we arrived. The dad picked me up from my house. There was no moon or street lights, so I could not see the ocean, but we were close enough to hear it. This would have been creepy enough all by itself, so the parents leave, we have popcorn and watch some TV for an hour or so before it's his bedtime. The kid is about 3 or 4, I wasn't sure. He didn't talk to me at all. So, with our current horror movie locale, this was creepy thing number 2. I put him in this travel crib to sleep and settled down in a chair in the room because I thought maybe he'd be too scared to go to sleep alone in a strange place with his parents gone. Well, he proceeded to kneel in the crib and stare at me through the mesh walls of it for a solid 30 minutes. No movement, no nothing. I tried coaxing him to lay down, offered to tell him a story or two. About this time, the mum calls to check in. I informed her he's not falling asleep, and she says, "Oh, you have to leave him alone in there and close the door. You can leave the light on and just ignore whatever you hear. He'll tire himself out eventually." So I'm like, what the hell? But whatever, I tell him goodnight and leave to close the door. And he's still just creepily staring at me. I go to sit in the next room when this thumping noise starts slow, and then continues to get louder. So I get up to peek into the room to see what he's doing. I know the mum told me not to worry about it, but hell, I had to see what the hell was going on. I look in, and he's banging his head on the side of the crib pretty hard, but it's one of those flimsy travel cribs, more like a playpen than anything, so he's not going to hurt himself, but he was lifting the whole thing a few inches off the ground with the force of his head bouncing. As soon as I go to close the door, he stops, stares right at me again with the most blank and creepy face. I quickly closed the door. The banging started again and continued for another 20 to 30 minutes, and then it stopped. I peeked in one last time, and luckily this time, he's fast asleep, his butt in the air, face on the mattress, but turned to the side so I knew he could breathe okay. The next 3 hours of complete silence were a bit torturous. I could not wait to leave. It's possible he had issues, lack of speech and his behaviour, but to not warn me at all was kind of wrong of the parents. I never babysat for them again, thank God. Not me, but I had a friend who babysat for a 7-year-old boy. And just before the parents left to go out, they told her he was possessed. It went something like, "Oh, if Tommy starts talking about the demons in his head, don't worry about it. He just thinks he's possessed." To my amazement, she went back to babysit again after that night. I just hope the parents paid her well. I would have noped the hell out of there. My parents always left me to watch my stepsister. One night when she was about 6 or 7, I told her that she could watch a movie with me. She went in her room to put her pyjamas on, then came out and asked, "My mum wants to know if she can watch the movie with us." Her mum had recently died, so I was completely creeped out and didn't know what to say. I ended up saying, "Sure, she can watch it with us." And then she says, "Okay, I'll go and tell her," and ran back to her room. I thought then it was probably her way of dealing with the loss, to pretend that her mum was still around like an imaginary friend. She's grown up to be an evil, manipulative sociopath, so now I think she probably did it on purpose to scare me. A few years ago, when my oldest son was a baby, my husband and I and our neighbours would often congregate in our driveway after our kids were in bed. We brought our baby monitor out and kept it off to save the shitty battery, but we turn it on and listen every few minutes. One night, I turned it on and immediately heard my son just wailing, crying and screaming, like he'd been at it for a while. I can't let my kids cry it out, so I rushed inside, and as soon as I opened the front door, I heard silence. I went up to his room, and he was fast asleep. I went back outside and asked if anyone else needed to check their kids, but none of them used a baby monitor. I asked if I was crazy, if anyone else had heard the screaming, and they all confirmed it. I guess it could have been another baby monitor nearby, but all my nearby neighbours were outside with us. It still creeps me out a few years later. I used to watch my brother's girlfriend's kids all the time, and they had this weird habit. Whenever they would colour or do something that required writing, they would slowly start to, quote, sing. It was like they were whining incoherent words with a strange melody behind it. The weirdest part was when I would ask them about it, and they acted as if they had no idea what I was talking about. They had no idea what they were doing and why they were doing it. They weren't autistic. They were perfectly normal girls for the most part. But damn, that was creepy, especially when I didn't expect it. I once babysat these 2 kids that lived down the block from me. The girl was about 6 and her brother was about 4. They had a rug in their playroom and started rolling it up and cocooning themselves in it. So I said, "Hey, why don't we play a game instead?" Then the girl goes, all creepily, "Oh no, our parents don't let us play with the games. We're not allowed. The carpet is our favourite toy,